So you talked about black triangles and silver orbs. Can you go into a little bit more like what I'd like to know the central phenomena. Where do you think most of the signal resides with regard to these anomalous sightings? What's the pattern?
The best pattern are what it is that the military sees. And those are the ones where I have a focus and where actually I'm involved with another group that's funded privately called Skywatcher. And what we're doing is we've been setting up sensor systems in what we call cleared areas where we know that there's no overflight. And we do sometimes work in concert with the FAA and others to make sure where we're setting up for repeatable measurements and sensor systems to see things. And we're seeing stuff that doesn't make sense. And so we're not coming to conclusions, but we're collecting the data. And because I'm a scientist, I'm like their principal advisor to this group. And we're setting up and doing the kinds of measurements that I think are necessary, because I'm not going to wait for the government. I'm not going to wait for daddy government to tell me what's right. I'm a scientist. I'm going to go out and do it myself. And so that's what we've done. And we've raised significant funds. And you can go look up Skywatcher on the internet and what it is that we're doing. And part of what we're doing is it's two purposes. One, it's basically aerial surveillance, partially just for drones, because we've seen what drones can do in wars. So, and you know about the drone incidents in New Jersey, right? And all of the hubbub that caused. Well, we were actually there. We were actually measuring things.
What was that?
Some of them were simply drones. Some of them, though, were moving in ways that would be hard to explain by drones. But all the stuff that we observed close to shore was clearly human activity. But so we're setting up Skywatcher as sort of a dual purpose. One is to work with the government to hopefully, or defense contractors, or anybody who wants to pay for our services, to collect aerial data basically as rapidly as possible. Because often you can't deploy the necessary equipment on site quickly enough to collect the data when there's an anomaly that shows up. Our principal goal is protection of the United States. But if in so doing, we happen to collect other information about some, let's say, anomalous objects, we will have the tracking data necessary to say, hey, well, we don't understand this. And it's important to know, because if it isn't a human adversary who have capabilities that we don't appreciate, even if somewhere in Area 51 they have something that does that, it's good for, I think, our military, the more public aspect of our military, to know that these objects do exist and report them when you see it, because it might be the Chinese or the Russians or the Iranians, right? You want to know this, because if you ignore it, you could be ignoring the data point off the line that is important to know about. Always back to that. Don't ignore the anomalies, because anomalies, just about every single Nobel Prize that was ever awarded in physics and chemistry or biology is because somebody paid attention to the anomaly.
Right. Yes.
Nobody likes plastic waste, but what about the plastics you can't see? I'm talking about microplastics, tiny fragments contaminating our water supply. Shockingly, 94% of U.S. tap water contains them. That's why we purify our water with Cove Pure, a powerful countertop filtration system that actually works. So why should you care? Because disturbing new research reveals there are up to 100 times more plastic particles in a liter of water than we thought. Some are so small that they slip into your bloodstream, invade your organs, and even accumulate in your brain. Experts say the average person's brain may contain the same weight in microplastics as an entire plastic spoon. Let that sink in. Eventually, this can lead to all kinds of health risks. And I don't think bottled water is the answer either. Heat and sunlight make those bottles leach more microplastics than tap water. And those cheap pitcher filters like Brita, they don't remove nanoplastics or most other contaminants for that matter. They're just like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Cove Pure is 1,000 times more effective than Brita and removes up to 99.9% of contaminants. That includes microplastics, fluoride, heavy metals, PFAS, and more. And the best part is it takes minutes to set up. No drilling or plumbers. Just fill it with water, plug it in, and with one tap, you can get pure water at whatever temperature you want, cold, hot, or warm, instantly. It's the cleanest, best tasting water you've ever tried. Clean water is one of the best investments you can make for your family's health. So make sure you're using the same filtration that Jordan uses. And because we've partnered with them, if you use the link in our description box below, covepure.com/Jordan, for a limited time, you'll get $200 off CovePure. So don't miss out.
So, tell me about the patterns of anomalous activity that characterize, that define something as an unidentified aerial phenomena, and then tell me what you've concluded as a consequence of your investigations, and where you. Yeah, let's do that.
So there are, let's say, 5 characteristics of something that you would think of as an anomaly. One is instantaneous acceleration and deceleration. Right? There's very few things that we know of that can go from 0 to 5,000 miles an hour and then stop on a dime without squishing everybody on the inside, sending them through the windshield. So when you see these things go from, in the case of the, I think it was the Nimitz or the Eisenhower, goes from sea level to space in less than a second, and they have the radar trackings of those things. And now imagine the size of the object. Let's say it weighs a ton. To instantaneously accelerate and decelerate at that level takes would take the energy of more than the nuclear output of the United States for a year. Okay, so where did you get that energy? First of all, so instantaneous acceleration and deceleration. So seeing things that do zigzags across the sky means that somebody or something has control if it's going fast enough, and it's not doing an arc. It means something has control of momentum and inertia. They can negate momentum and inertia. So that's an observation seen hundreds, if not thousands of times by pilots all over the world. So what does that mean about our understanding of physics, first of all? So that's one thing. The other is no apparent flight surfaces and no apparent exhaust. So no energy output. So you're moving and doing these things, and yet if you look at them with FLIR, which is a kind of infrared, you don't see any hot spots. If you were to look at a jet, all you would see is the plume from the jet. So no flight surfaces, meaning, basically Bernoulli's principle is not at play here, right? Which is basically how the wings work and lift. So Bernoulli's principle is not at play. So you're moving without a flight surface and without an apparent mode of inertia. You're not putting something out so that you can move forward. And then the other one is what you would think of as what's called transmedium travel, meaning something that can go from the water to the air and then back again, or to the air and to space. We have nothing that can do something like that. Recently, there have now been drones made and talked about openly, and actually these are U.S. Drones, just shown on I saw on a military video recently, where drones can be underwater, travel, and then come out of the water and go do the attack. But that's only been developed in the last, few years, not something from 50, 60 years ago. So those are the kinds of things that people see. And again, it's you ask me what I think of as real. Those anecdotes are, to me, stories. And why I get interested in the medical or the material side is it's something I can repeat. I can't repeat these pilot observations, but I can repeat experiments on materials or not experiments on human, but reading the humans who've been harmed. Now, the thing about Skywatcher is that we, at least in a limited sense, have a signal that can be released that sometimes it seems to attract these objects. And so that's where the repeatability attempt is coming in.
Explain that a bit more.
So because it's a company and I'm not the official spokesperson for it, and this is public information that's out there, is that there's a signal that an individual as part of Skywatcher had determined when he was working with the military, it wasn't his purpose to develop it, so he didn't take anything out. It was sort of he noticed something and then he refined the technique, and now he knows that he has, let's say, an electromagnetic sequence that he can release that somehow seems to have these objects show up. And I was there when it happened. We go out on these week-long events in like the middle of nowhere, and stuff shows up. And some of it's been some of it's you can go find it on Twitter, but the stuff that's on Twitter isn't good enough, in my opinion. I'm more interested in the data that we're more recently collecting with better cameras and better sensor systems, because the idea is just to do the science.